Tonight, we're going to focus on the child's programme, which is the 9 to 12 age category. So basically, you're under 10 and under 12. Now, last week we had James Ryan and Dave O'D. They took on the nursery programme. So I suppose we're the next stepping stone now of your children's programme. So presenting for you tonight is myself, Gary McCarthy. I'm the Games Development Officer from the south side, Limerick City. I'm a Galway man myself, so I'm inside the big smoke now, learning my trade and getting on great, thank God. And also with us tonight is Peter Nash, Hurling Development Officer based in Limerick City. He's a Kildimo Pallaskenry man, and you might know him from being involved with the Limerick senior footballers most recently. So I suppose I'd just like to thank you all for coming on and making the time to tune in tonight. You know, I suppose we're all gearing up for a big day on Sunday, All-Ireland final, and it's great that you're taking the time this week to come in and upskill as parents and coaches, especially the time of the year. So thanks for that. I suppose we move on. So just the contents page to just show you the structure of what we're actually going to go through tonight. So I suppose I've been through the introduction already and those formalities. Next on the list you see there is the breakdown of the online questions, which is the main source of the information that you will see on our PowerPoint tonight. So those questions that you logged in from that Microsoft form with Noel, we're basing the night off those questions. So Peter will then take you through about the player and what we as coaches need to take into context with that. Next up is our age appropriate training, planning and the layout of that training for this particular age group that we as coaches, I suppose, are catering for. We move on then to our player pathways, and I have inverted commas there, the essentials. So the essentials that we need or that the player needs to develop at this age. Then we move on to, I suppose, one of the strong questions that came out of everything is the catering for all the abilities in your team and dealing with that diversity. We'll move on then to sample sessions. So I don't know the sample session plan, and I'll take you through that and dealing with that and the age bracket and the way that we may go about it. Then the transitioning to this may be more game-based session types, which we will try and show you kind of a blend of, I suppose, skill-based to game-based stuff. And then finally, we'll move on to developing athleticism and looking at our fundamental movements. So just the breakdown there of our online questions. So this is what we've seen that were the most prominent questions in which you completed when registering for the webinar. So the most prominent one that showed for us was your slow developers catering for the weaker and stronger, keeping interest, concentration, focus and attention, how we can keep that in our session. Another one then was just simply upskilling, drills, fresh ideas, planning out your session. Then there was an interesting one of improving athleticism at this particular age, which is going to become more important now. Then you have your game-based training and your station training. So that's kind of it. We're going to start getting into the meat of things now. So Peter, if you want to go in there and start.
Yeah, just to reiterate Gary's points there, I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you for giving up your time. And I hope there are little nuggets that everybody here can possibly take from what we're trying to give out. We're trying to cater for everybody basically that's dealing with under 10 and under 12 players at the moment. Some coaches that may be just starting out, all the way to coaches, seasoned coaches that have taken groups through the pathway already and are trying again to upskill, trying to take a little nugget or trying to take a little bit of information out. So in order to do that, we just wanted to give a little bit of context to start off. And look, we just wanted to look at the players we were dealing with around this age and around this stage of development. So basically, we want to look at how we frame these things. Like a lot of these aspects of the individual player can be some of the most challenging things to deal with as a coach when you're trying to gain attention and focus. But if we look at them in a different way, they're probably the strengths of dealing with a group this age. And if we can tap into their endless energy and enthusiasm, and that being the most natural thing in the world to them, we're kind of tapping into a well of energy that we can manifest in different ways, and we can make that do what we need it to do for their development and for ourselves as coaches. Like stuff like characteristics, they want a ball immediately. They come to the pitch and they come immediately to you as a coach. Have you a sliotar? Have you a football? Have you a ball? Can we kick it around? And they're mad for go. They want games and matches. It's the first thing they ask for, the last thing they look for, and they can never get enough of it. They love to be challenged and tested, and excitement builds based on the nature of this challenge, you know. So we find different ways to challenge them as regards races, timing, relays, individual tasks, and as well themselves, they're discovering their competitive nature. Now, that's put very nice, but that can be very, very difficult to deal with. And like we said, that can manifest itself in different ways too. It can be a positive, it can be a negative. You can have a child at a tipping point that may lose control and has to learn that balance of knowing what competitive is. And us as coaches, if we're to teach that, if we're to show any group we're working with that, we have to understand ourselves. What is being competitive? How do we make ourselves competitive? And how do we control it so that it doesn't take over for ourselves as a coach or for the player we're working with? They respond to fairness positively and seek it out. They look for everything to be balanced, and they're probably a little bit biased with the balance they're looking for. They're always looking to tip the balance a little bit in their way, but they respond to fairness, and they respond really, really well to things being explained to them. They do understand long term. They may not want to see it immediately, but they do understand long term the fairness of a situation, and they know when they've been wronged, and they know when they've been well looked after also. They're also acutely aware of their standing within a group, and that's both socially and from a performance point of view. They know exactly where, if there was, let's say, a pecking order, they know exactly where they stand in that. They're fairly quick to figure it out. They know there's a group of players there that are fanatics and they're mad about it, and maybe I don't practice as much, and they understand that. But they also know as well socially that they mix in different groups of friends. We might have a joker in the group. We might have someone who's just mad for road and sees nothing else, only hurling. But we have to deal with that as coaches. And again, we have to, given ourselves context, we have to see the group as a whole, but also look at the individual that make up that group. So we need all different types of people to make up a community, the same way we need that to make up a team, to create the positive environment that we need, the focused environment that we need at times, and also in different ways give us a chance to decompress. So again, they're at a tender age for encouragement, and positive relevant feedback is essential. We're stemming from the age of, we're moving from the age, let's say, of looking at like that real innocent energy to that kind of transition towards a little bit of bravado and working towards, they think they know all aspects of the game and their confidence. But that can manifest itself in different ways as well. That can be a case that they may need that positive relevant reassurance, that really, really strong character, that person in your group that may not take instruction on immediately, may need that positive reinforcement and that arm around shoulder just as much as anyone else. So it's just about being aware of looking at things from every possible situation we can, opening our eyes and opening our arms to see where we can possibly take a player if we approach them in a different manner. And again, we're trying not to pigeonhole players or pigeonhole people at all, because if they're at the bottom of the pile at the moment, skill-wise and struggling, they could potentially be one of your senior club stars in the space of 12 or 14 years' time by the time they get to adult level, because that is a long time, and a lot can change in a small little window within that area. So if we just move on to the next slide, Gary. So again, to just give context, we've looked at the player and the characteristics around that player. So just to look at, they're leaving under 8 GAA games where they have been introduced to technical skills of the game, haven't got a full mastery of them yet, and they have a basic understanding of said skill, but they're coming from a beehive environment with a lot of ground hurling and different things, and we're trying to teach them probably a complete new game to what they're coming from. So if we expect too much going in, the chances are we're going to be disappointed, and ultimately then the group itself will be disappointed based on our expectations. So we have to take a step back and look at the group that we're dealing with, look at where they've come from, and look at where we're trying to send them, because they are a product of the game they have played for the last 2 years. And we are guiding them towards the game they'll play in 2 years' time, so that we can transition them up along the line, up along the pathway, and just to give them the little bit they need at the time, age-appropriate development, age-appropriate coaching, so that we can pass them on and the next layer of blocks can be added to the house. There is a disparity in skill proficiency levels across the group, from your fans to your fanatics. Within our area, within our teams, we have our fanatics, we have our lads that will not put it down, will not put the football down, will not put the hurley down. And we also have our fans that are happy enough to play. They're mad to be down at the pitch with their friends, but the game itself, they have other interests, and it's not the be all and the end all for them. But these are the group, if we really look at it as coaches, we need to be aware that the probability of the top 10% in every kind of group making it is probably very high anyway. Like, your top 10% are probably going to make it through if we allow for injury and different things like that. But what dictates the quality of that top 10% getting through is the environment that they've come out of. So as coaches, potentially, we may need to shift our focus and really look at the core group, that real group in the centre, in the middle, where what level can we potentially get them to? How high level of proficiency and understanding of the game and quality of movement can we get them to? So the 10%, the fanatics, the ones that we can't get the hurley or the football out of their hands, what level can we get them to by creating an environment, by really focusing on the players that are in the middle group that, like we said, could go either way. Our most average player, the standard of our most average player is going to dictate the standard of our top level player getting through, because again, it's about creating that environment. And then as coaches, we are trying to create a love for the game and the individual that will create a long-term sense of identity and belonging for the child. And I understand that we all know this. We all know these things. We all know the characteristics of the children we're dealing with. We all know the context that they're coming from. But again, it's just to frame the next few slides of the presentation and the rest of the presentation. And again, building that language around where we're trying to send them, where we've gotten them from, and creating that positive environment. And looking at ourselves personally as coaches to see what we can do to impact the group we're working with, because we are steering the ship ultimately. So I'll hand you back to Gary for the next couple of slides.
Yeah, I just seen a hand up there. So for anyone that does have a question at this stage, right, we will give time at the end. There's no problem with that. So if you want to just hold it there, put up your hands at the end and we will get you. Is that okay? So just moving on. So I suppose a big thing on the online questions, right, was age appropriate training and the planning and the layout of your session at this particular age group. So like, there's various different ways of effective setup and your training, and here are just ways that I suppose I found that worked for me and what I have found should be probably included. So look at my table of activities there on the right. So your warm-up, your fun game activity, that's it. So these are just relevant stuff in which I feel need to feature, but that doesn't mean to say that it needs to flow or be structured like this all of the time. I would say be flexible with it and do what works for your group. Like, you could talk to me and say, hi Gary, we can't get lads to settle down and go into drills or whatever. Why not start with a game? Small-sided games, let them off, referee the game for a couple of minutes, then go about your session. It could be a great way of getting that concentration factor into your game or into your session straight away. Warming them up, introducing functional movements into the warm-up. A fun game, keep them interested in what's going on. Now you've gotten their attention. They've played a game already, their heart rate is up, and now you can bring in your skill development. A small-sided condition game that works on the skill you try to develop, and then putting them into your games again to see if the skill development that you have done actually worked, and if not, try again. I think the importance of letting them play is crucial in a session. That's what they want. That's what they want in a session. So give them that. But you also have to be aware of the fact that they need to get the skills right also. So it's very important to, I suppose, include both. And knowing how to coach the skills is crucial. So you need to know the skills to, I suppose, get it across so that they will get the skills correct also. So over to my right is a design, I suppose, of station training setup. So is station training really appropriate for this age group? I think it certainly is, right? Especially for your under 10 group. It takes a bit of organization, but once the setup, I think. Sorry, a bit of an echo there. So lads, if you just have your mic on, you might turn it off there again. There was just an echo, sorry. But I suppose, yeah, at the under 10 age group, I suppose the station training is excellent. I think it runs a treat once it's organised properly, and it maximises the coaches to get involved, because you could have 4 stations, 4 different coaches, 4 different voices, and your 4 different rotating groups are getting a fresh voice all the time, and it's something that you should probably look at. So it's maybe a way to getting parents involved as well, like, so you can say to a parent, hi, fall in here, fall into this part of the circuit here, get them involved, and it could be a great way of getting them involved. For maybe under 12s, maybe you need a more blend of skills to games. Maybe, I suppose, when you're on the under 12, the station-based training probably goes out of it. Okay, so just moving on there now to our player pathways. So, and what I've called the essentials, I suppose. So what are the bases or the basics needed for our hurler or our footballer at this age? So I'm focusing here on an under 10 hurler, and it's the exact same principle for an under 10 footballer at this age. The essential movements are the same, and the games and the way they are set up and the numbers that are playing should be the same. The only difference is the skills needed for each coach, obviously. Above, as you can see here, it's a little graph done. It was done by Peter Nash and Dave O'D there over the lockdown. They put together brilliant pathways there. So the only difference is the skills, like the games and the movements are the exact same. So they are at a transitioning phase now, coming from a nursery program to getting the correct hands on the hurley, using the non-dominant hand as their catching hand, the ready lock position, the parts of the hurley, etc. So all these core things. So at this phase, a 10-year-old player is not a master of any of the above. It needs to be drilled into them again. So the major what a player is doing at an under 8 to an under 10 is not necessarily the skills or the different movements that you do or the fundamental movements that you do to develop your agility, balance, or coordination. The difference actually is the speed that they're actually doing the skills at now. Are they faster at processing the movements? Are they able to get the ball up quicker into their hand? Can they now take the basic skills of hand passing, your first touch, your jab lift, your roll lift the ball, your striking? Can they do these now a bit faster or whilst on the move? So on the move is the big thing here now. So that's the big thing. Skills on the move, and your skill-based stuff to enable the player to do this. So everything is challenged on the move now, and you're introducing performance skill whilst being opposed or having an opposition. So the games-based category here is worth taking a look at, right? So just look at the numbers here of the games. So this is massive. This is a massive thing on my behalf, right? They are children. They want to develop in games. Like you can't throw you could have 23 at a training and you can't throw them all into one game. So what I'd be saying is take the time to organise and plan the small sided games and let the players actually play. Keep them occupied. Keep giving them touches. Don't let them stand around and let them get lost in a session. This is a big area when we talk about catering for abilities in your training. Give your players the chance to flourish, give them touches, no long lines or long cues, or not letting them train and practice. Don't let them stand around. So that is the under 10s. Peter might put it into perspective now for the under 12s.
So as regards moving to under 12 football, the reason we didn't do under 10s hurling and under 10s football, like Gary said, and under 12s hurling, under 12s football, is because as regards both sports, as regards both codes, football and hurling, like the makeups of the movements we should be coaching players that age are exactly the same for 12s hurling and 12s football. And the structure and setup of our games and the stage of development that individual player is at, or that group of players are the very, very same. But again, like we said, the skills are different. So what we're trying to do is, and I really, really want to point out one point on this page and one point on this part of the presentation, and framed within our game. And that's make the game your servant and not your master. You're using the game to improve and learn. And there may be days and there may be times in your coaching that you're going to lay out something, and a group of individuals, the group you're working with, may not learn what you initially sought out for them to learn, but they have learned something. They've taken something from it. We coach on the fly, and the game is theirs. We're just trying to facilitate it as best we possibly can. Yes, we want them to be successful, but how do we frame success? What is success? And it's funny, I was having a conversation with a man today, and I was actually dropping green and white magazines, and I met a teacher that's also coaching in a club at the moment, and he said, if we look back and we talk about the games we played to the group we're working with before the lockdown, he himself just asked him the question saying, how many of those games did you win? They found out that they had 8 hurling games and 8 football games played from last year and just before the lockdown this year. And they said, I think we won 6 out of 8 of the hurling matches. They'd actually only won 3 out of the 8. And then they were asked how many of the football matches you think you won. They had 8 football matches played well, and they said, we won all the football matches. They'd actually only won 4 out of the 8. So again, with the game being the child's and the game being the players we're working with, who's chasing the result? Are we chasing the result? What are we trying to do? If we take a step back and look at the whole thing in context, the game itself isn't actually that important really to the group we're working with. They will remember what they're learning, and they will remember how they felt coming off the pitch. And there are a couple of things that we need to make sure that are constant in the game in order to really, really hold players. And we're worried about dropout, and we're worried about keeping players. And that's really, really down to how players are being made feel, the level of involvement they have. If we look back, again, your fanatic will be able to tell you how many games they won and lost. But if we look at the core group and the group we're trying to focus on and working on making sure, again, that average player that we have at the moment comes through to be the highest level of average player that we can possibly get them to, the result itself is in the coaching and the lessons learned. So if we're to talk through movements for under 12s, it transitions on a little bit, but our core movements are based around our fundamental movement skills. Again, they just move on. We look at speed and running technique, and I'll cover this a little bit later when we look at fundamental movement skills and building athleticism, which was an excellent question actually posed to us from your feedback sheets. We talk about jumping and transitioning into jumping and landing and moving. So transitioning into jumping is breaking from a run to a jump, and then later on I'll put the emphasis on the importance being just as much to know how to land as how to jump, and how we can really, really reflect the base of our landing being the start of our jump, and how it's a mirror image or a pyramid-based movement, let's say. I have breath understanding and control here because, again, nose breathing is a huge thing as regards controlling fatigue with long distance running and stuff like that. So that's in here as a tip. So we talk about controlling the breath and not getting that heavy mouth breathing on a run that just saps energy. The more we do, we're trying to conserve energy but being as efficient as we possibly can in both our movement and our breathing. And that's why motor coordination is the priority. How efficient can we make players, and particularly in the mastery of their own body. And if we're looking to transition towards strength-based movements, then it's purely body weight and mastery. And again, it's not even about mastering body weight at this stage. It's about understanding how the body moves. Let's say if I was to coach a basic introduction to a push-up, starting on the knees, making sure that there's a direct line between shoulders, hip and knees, and again that control of the hip joint, making sure that in the push-up it's not dropping. It's targeting different things like this, creating body awareness at this age before we put any form of body control or strength underneath that. So as regards football, our main core skills really would be skill development through player pressure, improving speed. How we do this within sessions would be controlling the size of an area or the amount of players playing in an area. If we want to test a certain thing, if we want to work on teaming our session around a block down in football, and we want to see as many block downs as we possibly can, or create as many avenues or as many opportunities as we can for a player to perform a block down, we make our area that little bit smaller to make it easier for players to get to the block. And then we'll add skill points for that. Again, making the game your servant and not your master, making the game do what you want it to do, going to the game with, okay, this is what I'm going to cover for the next 2 weeks in training. So I'm going to emphasize this, and these are performance-related outcomes I'm going to look for. And again, emphasizing the performance in order to allow our players to move into, because they're in that stage now where they're going to transition into learning to compete, coming out of GAA games under 12s, moving into board and no competitions under 13s, 15s, 17s, moving forward. They're going to learn how to compete. And there's a difference between learning how to compete and chasing the win all the time. If we continue to chase the win, it will continue to be that slight bit away from us. Because if we're not focusing on those key performance outcomes, the skills that we're looking to emphasize at certain times of the year, and creating that kind of, like we said, long-term development and learning pathway, the more we focus on these things and, like we say, apply pressure to the skill in different ways, ease off, add a little bit of pressure to a certain situation by making an area smaller, or taking the pressure off by making it a little bit larger depending on what skill we're looking to perform, and then emphasizing that in our game, the greater positivity and the greater the environment we can possibly create for the group we're at. And again, that's what this pathway that we put together, which is going to be released very, very soon for both hurling and football, that was the whole idea around it. And you'll see continually now as we move through the presentation that it's basically what we're trying to do with this is we're trying to frame the approach as best we possibly can. So I'll hand you back over to Gary now again. I won't, I'll carry on. So we talk about catering for all abilities, and it was an excellent question again posed to us. How do we control the disparity between levels of ability within a group? And difficult to say that we're not majorly in control of ability levels to a certain extent. But if we're going to cater for all abilities, it really comes down to our coaching, and we really, really need to look at ourselves and our approach. And again, I stress the importance of not pigeonholing players. It's our job to show them where they can possibly go, not limit their potential by putting tags in them at early stages and saying this, and not even looking at ourselves as coaches, but as regards we putting together sessions. Within sessions, if we want to really, really cater for all abilities, we're looking to work towards a ball per child as much as we possibly can. So if we have a ball per child and we have a 60-minute session, our involvement level is going to be at 100% throughout that session. But again, if we go immediately to a ball per 2, that's going to drop drastically down to 30 minutes of a 60-minute session. And every single time, particularly when we're trying to introduce skills at the early stages, the maximizing time aspect is the key element. So we're trying to keep that as much as we possibly can. The more involvement, the less chance we have of, let's say, losing concentration and focus, which we'll move on to in the next slide, and the higher chance we have of grasping the skill with a coach present that can help and guide. So no larger than a group of 3. And to be honest with you, this applies for me to any session at any age, at any level. No larger than a group of 3. As regards waiting times are cut down, more ball contacts, and it's a much easier job for us as coach. For these ages, I look at times, targets and testing as our 3 key components as regards creating a team for a season and creating a team for a session. It's measurable, it's attainable, and it's that challenge that we spoke about earlier. They love to be challenged and tested in certain ways. Put a time on something, 30 seconds max, how many roll lifts can you do, 30 seconds max, how many hand passes off both hands can you do football wise, give them targets, create target games. If we're looking to build precision within a player we're working with, if we're looking to get them striking through the ball, we build from the ground up, striking low into a target, slightly raising that target off the ground as we move on. No more than a group of 3, build it as a team relay and work that way. We create the excitement that they're craving. They're craving the excitement. They come to the pitch, they want to meet their friends, they want to be involved in these games, and they have the energy. So like I said, framing things earlier on, we're working towards using the energy they have to our advantage. We create an understanding of the skill, and this is formed at under 8s level, but again, that understanding of the skill changes and adapts as we move forward. So under 10s and under 12s, it's important to explain the use of every skill as we move through all the time. It's important, even there, videoing different things, different aspects of the skill, and allowing the player to see it in action, bringing out their hero, a video of their hero striking a ball if you work on striking, and show this is what, let's say, this is what Aaron Gillan does when he strikes a ball, when he's taking a free. Look at how high his elbow is, look at the angle of his hurley, look how his hands are together, and look where his feet are. All those small things, if you get little snippets of that from little games and show them to players, it can help them understand a little bit more. I would also stress, like within sessions, we encourage practice time within sessions. I feel that out in the ground and meeting a lot of coaches, that we want to really put on the best show we possibly can as regards being organised and having everything structured and having everything like as regards creating safety for the parents watching in on the line. And that's 100%. There are times when we need incredible structure, and certain aspects of the game we're looking to focus on. We need incredible safety and structure and time like that. But also the players we're working with need that time for interaction, need that time to themselves with the skill we're working on. So there's absolutely no problem in the world with allowing a 3-minute practice with focus as a coach, moving around, giving individual feedback to whatever that child wants to perform, or even wants to show you, sending a child away saying, I'd like you to work on this. And then in your 3-minute practice slot the next week at the session, that's their chance to come up and show you exactly what you asked them to work on the last day. And allows the coach to decompress a little bit mid-session, take a step back and get a look at the big picture and get a look at the whole group and watch them in action. So we reinforce the positive aspects of the performance and positively address where we can seek improvements. Confidence aids competence. And that's a very, very important line for me as regards moving forward. But we don't want to kids at this age potentially have a kind of, and a lot of people probably said about me, they probably have they overestimate their own ability to a certain extent. You ask them how many roll lifts did they do, they'll tell you 830 seconds. Or you ask them, how good are you at this? Show me this. I'm excellent at it. And all these things. We want to use that. We don't want to kind of dispel that. We want to say, absolutely you are. And do you want to know how you're going to be better? Add this to it. And this is how we frame and create that excitement and use the energy that they're giving us. So they're just a small few tips within sessions how we can cater for all abilities. And like I said, it really comes down to our own coaching, taking ownership and accountability. And it's the small messages over time, consistently, that are going to help with this divide that we're worried about in coaching. That's going to be naturally there with groups all the way through all the age groups. As regards tackling that divide, attention to detail is massive. Really looking deep down at that real close on attention to detail, the small things, the small little tweaks and changes you can make to help a group. And then, like we said, going home, reflecting after each session, how can I add that in? How can I word that the next night I go down there? How can I add that into my demonstration at the start? Or how can I add a little aspect to my training session that's going to allow them to work on exactly what I want them to work on, but without me having to overemphasize the teaching point or put myself in a position where I tell them that they're not performing this correctly. We want to, again, use the confidence that they have, or that awareness that they have of their standing within the group, or the energy that they have, to your benefit. Moving on, as regards practice being task oriented, giving targets before you go home. finding out how many jab lifts they can do in 30 seconds. It's currently sitting at 16. Give them an achievable target. I want you to add 10% to that. I want that to be 18. And then in that practice time within the session, you've given them 3 minutes at the start, 3 minutes in the middle, 3 minutes at the end, allowing them to decompress, giving them what they need or giving them what they're seeking out in order to get the best quality we possibly can when we're approaching the session. That will be the time for them to show you that. Player of the week. Now, this can be a contentious issue when dealing with, let's say, parents and different things. But if we frame player of the week slightly differently, and everybody's acutely aware of exactly what it stands for and exactly what we're looking for, it can be an incredible tool for us as coaches. We're talking about, again, using kind of incentives to create that focus in a session. We positively reinforce the player of the week. The player of the week is not necessarily based around, let's say, a scoring performance or anything like this that will repeatedly go to the same player. If we want our group to stand for, or we want to try and put respect, humility, real honesty of effort and enjoyment and smiles on the faces of every group, if that's what we want our group to stand for, that's what the player of the week should represent. Again, reinforcing through the group, it becomes a habit. Oh, he won the player of the week. I'd love to win that next week or the week after that. Why did he win it? Oh, well, he was present at the session. He was running straight into the huddle when the coach wanted to show him something. He was applying himself throughout. And this is coming from the coach's mouth at the end of the session. And again, it starts to filter down. These things don't just happen immediately. They happen over time. Building really, really good habits and creating the environment that they want to be involved in, that they will feel a loss from if they're not involved in, and that they're getting something out of every night they come down. Practice attempt of the week, again, then on top of that, this will allow you to level your playing field. Your practice attempt can be absolutely any one at any time. It can be any form of an improvement, and again, it will give you the chance for the player to come to you and say, watch this, while I was away. And little prizes, little small things, I'll come to that in 2 points time. A little idea we've had, and myself and Gary were talking about this earlier on, a come to the pitch day. So if we want to encourage practice, and we don't build it into our session, or we don't give a chance for it, it's very, very hard to really, really stand over saying, well, you didn't practice, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. If we give them a chance to practice as well within sessions, it'll build a habit. Again, over time, these small things will really, really add up. So our come to the pitch day would, let's say, would happen once a month. All your training sessions are on a Tuesday night. A lot of our coaches involved have kids involved in the same group. So you're going to be taking your child generally to the pitch maybe on a Saturday morning anyway. So maybe once a month we say, okay lads, this Saturday has come to the pitch day. The pitch is free between 10 and 11 on Saturday morning, and I'm going to be down here. I'm just going to throw my slitters out into the middle of the pitch, and I want you to come down, and I want you to practice, come to the pitch, play with your friends, bring your helmets, bring your hurley, but it's going to be all down to you, and you can practice whatever you want to practice. You can come down and meet your friends, and it makes practice a social thing. We want them walking around with their hurleys and their footballs in their hands as much as we possibly can. So if it becomes a social outlet, as much as anything else, it becomes something that we're tied to and we love and we're constantly involved in. So just coming up with that little idea that come to the pitch day once a month, or even if you wanted to do it, if there was a particular time where you wanted to focus on skill development, if you did it every weekend for 4 or 5 weeks. And again, it allows you to take a step back as a coach. So it's a tool for you. It's a chance for you to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and see, right, this is what we can work on next week at the session, because there's 8 out of the 12 players that are here working on that. We'll do that on Tuesday. But also, the big thing with that for me is let them alone. Go down, police it, help them, give them a hand. If they come to you and ask you a question, by all means, give them the feedback and look after them and help them. But allow them to have their time. Create that come to the pitch day, like we're saying, create that social outlet, that chance for the player to really come down, meet their friends and practice, and it become a thing for them, and let them take ownership of it. You could see, and I see it in primary schools all the time, if I come up and I just say, right, this is a free play day, they break into little games. Some of them play the games that we played the week before because they enjoyed them, and it just naturally falls into itself. And yes, it does take a lot of confidence in our coaching to do that, but once we take the leap, it can be a huge thing for us. So it would be lovely to see it come to the pitch days for each individual group we're training with, starting to flock together now in the next, when we go back in January, February, March and April, and hopefully that may become a coaching tool for you. Little touches of class that encourage individuals. You all do them. I absolutely know you all do them. That little hand around the shoulder, that little bit of encouragement, that little bit of pride you share mutually with your player when something that you're trying to show them and help them with comes across and they perform it under pressure in a game. They're moments that can't be bought. They're absolutely brilliant. Those slitters that you give out, let's say at the end of a training session, or there's a kid hanging around after your session at the pitch and you pop them a slitter out of the box and they go home delighted. Those are the things they remember. They may not remember what you did in the session in 3 months' time, and I see it all the time. Like you might, just the same way that if you promise them something and don't give it to them, or you forget about it or it slips your mind, they'll remind you. They'll remember the fact that you looked after them a little bit as well in those other ways. So the finishing point again as regards tackling the divide is seeing the good in everyone and acknowledging it. Yes, there are going to be chasms. Yes, there are going to be disparity in ability levels. But once we see the good in everyone in our group, and that may be difficult potentially with the player that is kind of presenting slightly different as regards the bravado and not listening, and they're slow to come in and they're mad to puck a ball every time you call them in. I wouldn't view that as a negative for me. I wouldn't view that, let's say, a player outside and they're mad to puck a ball and they're tapping the ball in the hurley. That's the excitement and the love for the game. That's the feel for the ball. And a lot of players, when they leave the game, they say you can't replace that feel for the ball in your hands. That's what they're growing there with that little bit of tippy-tappy on the hurley or that bouncing a ball while you're talking. That's what's happening there, even though it is a little bit of a distraction with coaching. So I would see the good in everyone and acknowledge it, and I'd look for it, because you are going to need everyone. And we are becoming acutely aware of that in Limerick coaching games, and particularly everybody in the clubs knows this. You're going to need absolutely everyone going through at 14s, 16s and 18s. So if you see the good in them, it will be much, much easier to work together going forward. So moving on to the next slide, and I'll fly through this one. Concentration, intention and focus. And again, we're framing this slightly different, and I want to shift the responsibility back onto the coach here. My couple of key points here are: you are there for them. You're there for the kid, you're there for the player, you're there to facilitate and help them, and not to limit their potential, to try and help them maximize their potential as much as they possibly can. We are all social beings. We love to meet each other, and the last 12 months, or the last 8 months in particular, have shown us nothing else. We love to meet people and chat and interact. So allow them to interact within your session. You create situations that encourage them to interact within your sessions and problem solve. We're mad for everything to be busy within a session. We're mad for everything to be at 100 miles an hour. We think we need to be constantly improving. When focus and when progression doesn't work like that. Progression isn't a constant upward scale. You're going to be retesting, reteaching, re-showing and reimagining what you do in order to get your point across. And we're all hoping that we get as much through, but with clear, consistent language, that's what's going to happen. And keeping players, by keeping them engaged, showing an interest in some of their interests even outside the sport, that's what's going to be the most important thing. Queuing. We queue in some ways. Okay, I need everybody in now. Everybody in, everybody in, everybody in now. In we come, in we come, in we come. And I've done this in a couple of sessions outside in different clubs. What I'll do is, okay, I'll say, right, there are 30 seconds on the clock. We finish an activity. There are 30 seconds on the clock. I want you to be set up for the next game in lines, 3 behind those cones, facing me at the end of that 30 seconds. If you're set up in 5 seconds, your other 25 seconds you're on to chat, do what you need to do all around. But as soon as I count down from 5, you're lined up one behind the other in groups of 3 behind the red cones facing me. And just let that happen. It'll give them time to decompress, offer up control a little bit back to them, and you'll find small things like that at work. Queuing, setting that up, okay, the countdown, we've all done the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Give them slightly longer. Give them 15 and say, use your time smartly. Say what you need to say, get it off your chest, kick that ball away, do what you need to do. But that ball needs to be in. If you kick it, that ball needs to be in by the time we get to the end of our count of 5. Frame it slightly differently and we'll get more positive results. let them sample what they want and give them time to digest your message. And that's the big thing about this cueing, exactly what I'm talking about, giving that slightly extra time, 15, 20 seconds, and allow them. It works both ways. They get what they need, they get what they like. We're building that social aspect and that interaction and that bond and that enjoyment of training, but it also gives them a slight bit of time to digest your message. And you might see that in an individual as well. Small groups and individual tasks. Groups of 3, ball to a man. That's the way we're working. Keep your message short and drip feed the finer points. And that's what it's about. Because you're going to be reiterating your point as regards coaching the skill all the time, if we try and overload them with the 5 points of the skill at the very, very start, we're going to lose the concentration and attention and focus. It's going to happen. It's natural. I've been talking for a long time now, and there's probably some people mentally checked out here, and that's 100%. But that's just the way it works. We're only natural and we're only human. If you keep your message short and drip feed the finer points, give them 1 point, 2 points, 3 points at maximum. And then the finer details, those small little finer points, are 1-to-1. But they're added into your debrief at the end. So our 3 main points, and then you ask the group the question, what are the other parts of the skill that we really, really need to focus on? And one of the players will say, okay, you asked me to keep my hands apart, thumbs pointed down the hurley, and make sure that the ball is between my feet and my shoulders are over the ball when I'm roll lifting. But you also said that I have to keep the toe of the hurley out. And then, oh, he never said that to me. And it starts to sink in a small bit. And this last point, before I pass you back over to Gary, is conserve your coaching energy by not fighting the tide, but steering the ship. We understand completely that there are some things with regards to behaviour that are completely unacceptable. But there are some things as well that if we relinquish a small bit of their control or shift the focus or reframe things slightly, it will allow us as coaches to take a step back, take a deep breath, decompress, and really, really enjoy the coaching and the process and the learning, because you're giving them a lot, you're helping them a lot, and you're showing them and teaching them and helping them to grow, and you're giving them a gift for life. So, on to our next slide with Gary.
Yeah, good man, Peter. Very good there. So just moving on to the next part now, our sample session plans. Now, I suppose I wish times were different. I suppose that you could actually be standing in front of us in a hall or on the field, and you know, we'd have stuff laid out and you can actually see how it works with a group. But look, I suppose we're unfortunate at times we have to do it this way. So I didn't want to go down the line of putting 5, 6 session plans and we're trying to look through them and go through them, because look, we'd be here all night. So I said I'd take one that I put together, I suppose, early on in the lockdown. And I just said, look, I'd go through that. And if he saw the setup and the layout of that she could go away and I suppose improvise a small bit and make your own plan around this one, I suppose. So just looking here at a few key points, and or not even key points, just things that probably need to feature. So I'd be saying create a team or focus on a certain aspect in your training. So whether that is it the kick pass we're going to focus on tonight? Is it hand pass? Is it the crouch lift or whatever it is? Create a team and do your skills or your game-based stuff off that team. Very important to know the key teaching points. Like, I suppose if, say, it's the hand pass in football, know that they have to strike with their dominant hand, holding the ball in their non-dominant hand, with their foot forward as a platform. All the key coach points, we need to know them to pass on that knowledge to the children, because if we don't know them, they're not going to get it into them either. So I suppose involve fun, skill and game-based activities. So a blend of all 3 I think is essential for this particular age group. We're not working with a minor or under 21s where it has to be all game-based and decision-making and all that. It's important, but you need to keep it fun. They need to still learn the skills. Functional movement skills, so FMS, just a short for functional movement skills. I think that's key to be worked on in the warm-up. Functional movement skills are your agility, your movement, your balance, coordination, speed, reaction. These foundations of movements that we're going to need going forward as a player. Great place to put them in the warm-up. Peter's going to be talking about them in more detail in a while. Don't be afraid to play the game first or play the game early. Like, we all think we have to come in, we have to do a warm-up, we have to do our skills then, and we'll reward them with a game at the end. Sometimes, guys, maybe the best thing to do is warm up, put them into a game, straight away you've their concentration got. They're after being in a game activity, they're got a touch of the ball, they're delighted now they're after getting their game, and then you can bring them out and focus on something, or focus on what you've said that you're going to work on. Not every session will go to plan, obviously, so we do need to improvise. Like, I could go to a club on Monday night, do a great session, get great reaction out of the coaches, ask questions, get questions asked back to me, and it could just run a treat. I could go out to another club on Wednesday, do the exact same thing, and you just don't get the same buy-in. So what I'd say is, look, plan to fail, right? But prepare then to actually go back then and improvise and make it better. Couldn't emphasize the last line enough. Small-sided games, small groups, plenty of touches. That's what we should see in our session plan. So I just took on an under 10 football activity or football session plan. So I looked at tackling. So I suppose we said now we're after transitioning from under 8s, where they're after getting the skills, right? But they've probably been unopposed maybe to now, and they've probably had very little pressure on them from the under 8 go games, we call them. So now you're coming into under 10, under 12, where there's going to be more pressure on what they're doing. The skills that they're doing are going to be opposed now. So they need to, I suppose, train for that environment. So I just put in here, right? I left out the warm-up because I've said the warm-up is going to be our fundamental movement skills, which Peter's going to go on with a while. So we're going to start with that. Great. Heart rate is up. We've worked on core blocks of things now that need to be worked on. Lovely. Then I've put in a fun game. So it's a fun game, but it's still in the theme of our tackling or our block down that I'm focusing on today. So the grid block game, you see it there in the right bottom hand corner. Grid block game, team retain possession by kick passing, while the other team tries to gain possession by blocking the ball down. So basically, one team is trying to kick into another zone, and the opposing player is trying to block down. Fun game, let it run. Take a step back, look and see what's going on, blow the whistle after having their crack. They don't even know what they're probably trying to work on in the game. And you bring them out and say, okay, what were we trying to work on there? Ask the question. Fine. Tackling, the block down. So if we're going to need to work on that, what I'd say is take them out of the fun game, and now we have a drill set up to actually work on what we're trying to do, which is the block down. So a simple one here, basic drill, partner block. Player A toe taps the ball for player B in a kneeling position to block the ball down. Very simple. They're in pairs. Everyone is active. You have a ball between two. Everyone is active. Everyone is getting to practice the block down with 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, whatever it is. There's no queuing. No one's waiting. They're there actually practicing what we're trying to do. If that works well, you can throw them back into the fun game. So they're gone back into their grid block game now. So they're playing away again, and you see, did the actual skill development work now in the fun game? If it did, great. If not, we can bring them out. We have a second block down drill, made up, the zigzag block. This is just here for example. So one player moves from one cone to the other and tries block down in just a zigzag pattern. Very, very like what we had with the one-on-one partner block. Exact same thing. You're working on the block down, bring them back into the game again, and finish off with a full-sided game and reward, I suppose, the players, whether they're girls, boys, whatever it is, reward the players for the block down as opposed to the actual scores or general scores in the game. Now, to do all this, you obviously need to know the key points, and these need to be kept really, really simple, I suppose. So I wouldn't go any more than 3. So we see the key points here. Stand close to the opponent, check position, reach forward, aims out as the opponent prepares to block the ball, block at a point of contact with the boot. Very, very simple. Leave it at that. Moving on, we'll stay with the tackling. So near hand tackle, right? Very, very important skill of the game. Probably isn't done great at senior level. Lads still put their hands on people's backs or whatever. So I suppose getting the key points again, we know the key points. So we've done our warm-up, our fundamental movement skills again, put them into a fun game. The fun game here is player in possession, they attempt to solo on the grid, defending players attempt to block. Very good. Like it's like I suppose the Red Rover, one's on one side, one's on the other, but you have a ball and you're just trying to tackle now. So leave them off, say nothing, let them tackle away, take them out of the game then and say, okay guys, this is what we're actually trying to focus on, our near hand tackle, give them the key points and put them into a basic drill, which you see here. Players are in pairs again. The player that's in possession of the ball solos, partner attempts to tackle with his near hand. Okay, so now you have your fun game, your drill, bring them back into a game again and see, did that actually work? Did bringing them out of the game, showing them the key points, did that work? Is there more near hand tackling now in our game? So I suppose then we go on to the game-based activities, right? And I suppose the session plans that I just went through there, like they are kind of game-based, I suppose, but you're still focusing on getting the skill correct just in a game-based setting. Like here, like this is advanced, this is probably more advanced, it's probably for an academy team, but it still has the same principles what we were trying to work on. Like I think here it's attacking for points, so you put them into an initial game. So you make an initial game of the attacking for points and bring them out of that game then again, question and see what went wrong there. Was the attacking for points, was it this point scoring that went wrong? Was it the ball that was kicked in was wrong? So is the kick passing actually wrong? So say for instance it was, we're bringing them out, we're doing a skill practice drill, which here is the skill practice, which is the hook pass. So you're just hook passing while the receiver is moving. All right, so they're after practicing their hook pass now, you put them back into a game again to see, did that hook pass actually work? Did that skill-based stuff work? Putting them back in to the, I suppose, the area of high traffic, under a bit of pressure. If they make a bit of decision making now, can they do the drills in that atmosphere? And that's basically it, lads. Peter, you might take on.
Yeah, no, and just the point that Gary made there, that allows for a lot of let's say creating that game understanding and awareness, because in order to receive a ball we need to be aware of the situation that the person who's trying to play the pass to us has created. So again, it will create that opportunity for your players to realize that it takes two people to make a pass, a kicker and a receiver, and the easier the receiver can make the kicker's job, the better, and the easier the kicker can make the receiver's job, the better as well, ultimately leading to that bit of success, but also creating that kind of understanding of how we move and how we work on the pitch. And what I see inside, let's say as a forward receiving a ball, might not be the image that the person at wing back or wing forward delivering the ball might have seen, and that's just the swings and roundabouts of a game. Working towards developing athleticism and fundamental movement skills, look to focus on kind of three key points here. And movement is as much of a skill to be understood as any other part of the game. We look at running. There are a couple of different ways we can look at running. If we can make running as comfortable as we possibly can, again, looking back to player pathway earlier on for under 12s, we looked at running technique and we spoke about the importance of running technique, but also breathing and efficiency and making running not as much of a chore as it should be by creating that efficiency within the movement. So building from the ground up as regards running, building that march, so that opposite hand, opposite leg march. And again, drip feeding that point. We're trying to create pathways in the brain here with movement. And that's why we see people, let's say if I go opposite hand, opposite leg, as a coach, an individual might find it difficult to coordinate, and they'll bring up their right hand with their left hand and it won't be as easy for them to grasp. So we slow it down and we cue it. I'd like you to bring your right knee right up in front of you, and I'd like you to make a sword with your left hand, and I want you to bring that up to your opposite lip. And from there, that left hand controls that right leg. So we build that pathway as best we possibly can. You get them to slow things down, control, and as they drop their left hand, their right knee brings their right foot to the ground. After they lift it up to their lip, their right knee brings their foot off the ground, right up to hip position. And we're coaching that opposite hand, opposite leg, but that high knee drive in the running, so we can open the stride and make them as comfortable as we possibly can with the movement and efficient, so they conserve energy and really come to enjoy running and the skill it is. From there, we look at the high knee drive and ball of the foot. We're looking to push the ball of the foot down and backwards into the ground, pushing that knee right up to hip height every time I make contact with the ground, and my hands move from my hip to my lip. So from there, that will cut out hands coming across the body when we run, and all those small little things that we're looking to tweak. And if we go from hip to lip and tuck our elbows in, you'll see efficiency start to come into the movement. Just as much as we have to be taught striking and kicking, kids really have to be taught running and jumping and landing and multi-directional movement. Landing well to jump correctly. In order to really get that quality of a top level jump and maximize it, but also make it as safe and efficient as we possibly can, we must learn how to land. So if we look at our jump and our top level vertical jump, reaching our hands overhead, if we look at the end of our jump as the start of our landing, we get players to rise up onto the balls of their feet and place their hands overhead, and in slow motion we get them to drop their hands to shoulder level, and once their hands get to shoulder level, their knees start to bend. Once their knees start to bend, they start to sit back into their chair a small bit, so they'll feel the weight moving from the ball of their foot back onto the center line of their foot, and the more they sit down, as their hands come back to meet their hips, you'll see them drop into that efficient position. Knees don't touch and feet never kiss. Knees never kiss and feet don't touch. We're looking to make sure that we keep the knees shining out over the center line of the foot as much as we possibly can, like two headlights. And again, it's just building that. And it's the same for the broad jump. For single leg hop and bound, we're starting to build single leg stability, because if you really look at things, everything we do on a pitch is going to be single leg. Every run, we only have one foot in contact with the ground at any given time, and sometimes with our run, we have, at a certain stage, we have no foot in contact with the ground and we're airbound. For our driving up, for our overhead catch, and we're getting that high knee into high position to protect ourselves, fielding a ball overhead, again, it's one foot that sends me there. For change of direction, when I push off and run straight back the line I came, I'm lifting a leg off the ground that's following me and pushing off the foot to send me back the way I'm going. So everything we do on a pitch, we're looking to build single leg stability as much as we possibly can. But moving back from that, if we can't jump and land correctly on 2 feet, and we can't stabilize the knee and stop it coming in, and like I said, knees don't kiss and feet don't touch, it's going to be very hard to build that single leg stability. So in order to learn how to jump single leg and land single leg, we learn how to do it with 2 feet. And in order to learn how to jump correctly and safely with 2 feet, we teach them how to land first. Slow down the movement, watch for those things with the knees shining out over the center line of the foot, and those correct positions. Nice proud chest all the time in our landing. Multi-directional movement is important, and our cues as regards what we're looking for them in game situations. If a corner forward was to run out and turn a corner back, we would never like to see the corner back turn a big loop and follow that man in towards goals. We'd look them to try and cut as quick as they possibly can and head for their own goal post to cut off the forward coming in. So for our multi-directional movement, if we're setting them up in drills and we're looking for them to stop, turn, change direction as fast as we possibly can, we coach that. In order to decelerate, we get nice and low, we get them to hit top speed, and we coach them to decelerate in a certain area. So if we have a 40-meter sprint, we lay out a 45 or 43 meter area. They start from their line, they sprint as hard as they possibly can, and they must stop within the 3 meter area once they've passed the 40-meter line as hard as they possibly can. How they do that is they take loads of small steps and they get low and your heels are your brakes, pretty much. Multi-directional movement, anytime we want them to turn sharp, it's loads of small steps, get low and cut back along the line that you've cut back or you've come out, and learn how to stop, turn, change direction. And a lot of the best ways we can do that are with quite simple games along the lines of tag, no man's land, all these different games, and your game and your match will always be the best way to teach and show the group you're working with what you want them to do. Just as much as exactly what Gary said. If I have a little game or I have a little warm-up game where I'm setting out, stopping and turning and changing direction, and I put them straight into a match, and I emphasize, the more I see this in game-related scenarios, the more I'm going to reward it. It starts to emphasize the point, and it starts to click, and the penny starts to drop with the player. So within our game, we're seeking out chances to positively reinforce what we've coached throughout the session, just as much as we are using that game to coach what we're trying to do. They're completely dependent on each other, and they can be incredibly useful coaching tools the more we emphasize these things. So moving on from developing athleticism, we're just looking to emphasize our key takeaway points. So you've been sat a long time, you've been listening, and you've been looking at this dodgy mustache for quite some time now. And the haircut as well, don't get me wrong, I need to acknowledge that. Lockdown hit some of us harder than others. Maybe some of you are thinking now that, geez, my lockdown wasn't too bad. But we're not looking to get away from our takeaway points here. We need to plan sessions as much for chaos as you do for structure, because in games, in matches, in certain things are going to go wrong. And if we're expecting everything to be perfect all the time, we're going to be incredibly let down. There's just no two ways about it. And our players are going to develop coping mechanisms based around everything being right all the time. And that's not going to be the case. So we plan our sessions for as much chaos as we do for structure, and we create situations where there's going to be chaos, where things are going to be wrong. Your message may not get across directly all the time, first time, but you're always going to be re-emphasizing your point from the time you get the player to the time they get to adult level. So we be patient and we have time. And with our clear, concise, consistent language where we're reiterating the same points over and over again, the right way to go about things, it will get through and it will click. Use of cueing, not setting our players up for failure by saying, okay, in here now, what are you doing pucking that ball? What are you doing pucking that ball? They're pucking that ball because they love pucking it. And again, like I said, they're creating that love and that sense for the ball, because nothing will replace that feel of the ball in your hands. Set them up. You have 45 seconds now after that session. Do what you need to do. Compare the scores that you just got in the 30-second task I sent for you, exactly like you want to do. And then you're in with me on the end of the count to 5. And it decompresses and it gives the players what they need, and it takes the pressure off you as a coach. Team your season and team your session. This month for me is going to be kicking off both feet, right and left. And I'm going to go to my games and I'm going to go to our blitzes, and if I see someone kicking perfectly off their non-dominant leg, that's exactly what I'm going to emphasize at halftime. That's what I'm going to emphasize after the match. These are the things I'm going to look for. I'm going to use this game to do what I wanted to do. And that's to ultimately move that player slightly further along the pathway so that he can move on to the next level. And no matter what player you get, yes, they could be 11 and they could be struggling with skills that were introduced at 8. It just means they're a little bit behind. Every single player you get is somewhere along the pathway. And what we're trying to do as best we possibly can with our setup, our structure, our teams, and our language is to make sure that we get them a little bit further down along the pathway. Because their top level could be at 24, 25. But if their top level is at 24, 25, that's continued participation. That's reduced dropout. That's exactly what we're looking for all the time. So, looking again to create fanatics from fans with our small tips, with our small little things like that little practice day once a month where I'm going to be down the pitch with my kids anyway, or I'm going to be down the pitch anyway. Let's give the group a chance for everybody to come down and just practice and play. If we say that kids aren't playing enough, kids aren't doing the things that we did when we were younger, we need to give them the opportunities then to do it as best we possibly can. and all of a sudden practice becomes fun. Carrying your hurley or football up and down the street or to school and home from school becomes natural, and it becomes something, again, it's a means of expression. We need to allow them to express as much as we possibly can as well. Like I said, just to finish up with that takeaway points, seek out opportunities to positively reinforce behaviours you want from the group. If we're talking about, like we said, application, focus, concentration, and these are the things that we may be potentially struggling with as coaches, when we see it happen, reward it. When we see it happen, acknowledge it. If the group was incredibly tuned in on a night, point it out. Because the next night, they could be completely different. And we could struggle to get them in, and we could struggle to pull them in. And at that stage, then there may be a time where we move straight into our game. But there will be nights where we all have those nights coaching, or those days coaching, or I've had them in schools, or I've seen them like that, where everything goes absolutely perfect. And you take the next session, the exact same session, to the next group, and it just doesn't fit in with where they are. And myself as a coach, then I have to go away and say, right, the session I put together there for that group, was it right for them? Was my approach okay? Was my energy to the highest level it could have been as a coach? What responsibility can I take from what's just gone on there? And again, we create that environment by constantly seeking out those behaviours, setting them up for success, giving them chances to decompress and learn and enjoy and interact and express, and that environment becomes a little bit easier to manage then. I understand, and I'm very, very conscious that we have players and we have groups that are incredibly large, and it's easier to get lost in the crowd that way, and it's much harder to manage that larger crowd. But again, those core concepts of small groups, ball per player, task orientated focus, these are the things that will make those things easy to manage. So that's going to be the end of the session for tonight. On behalf of myself and Gary and all at Limerick Coaching Games, on Hartigan, James Ryan, David Adi, Ali Coffey and Paul Brown, I'd like to say a very, very thank you. A very, very big thank you for tuning in. Again, like I said at the start of the setup, I hope that you'll take some nuggets from what myself and Gary have put together, and from what James and David have put together last week. And just here at the end of the slide, we just put up some resources for you, some small things on Twitter that both of us, myself and Gary, we follow and we get a small bit from, because again, it's that learning and what can I take and what can I reframe to make it do what I want it to do. And those Twitter resources are just a couple of nice ideas, or a couple of nice things that you may take something from that could reshape or reframe your session. Again, we will have a Limerick GAA Coaching Games player pathway coming out, and coaching booklets coming out, and our Limerick GAA Coaching YouTube with all coaching videos and skill videos is also live. So if you give that a subscribe to, that'd be fantastic, and a lot of our coaching videos will be going up on that over time. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to taking all your questions, and we hope that we've answered a lot of the questions that you have posed to us, or you have taken something that you may use. So much appreciated, and thank you very much for everything, Gary. It was a pleasure working with you.
No, thanks, Peter. And guys, thanks for tuning on. As we said, this time of the year, not easy. Not easy, right? There's one more. So there's one more week of it. So next Wednesday, I think, Ali Coffey and Paul Brown will be going through the youth. So the youth program. So that's, I suppose, transitioning again on from what we've just done. So looking forward to that. You'll get great insight there from two guys who have a lot of experience of both playing and coaching. So if you want to tune into that, Noel will be sending you out a link. And look, any questions on tonight, throw them out, we'll answer them. And look, thanks again, and hopefully Limerick bring home Liam on Sunday.
That's the hope. So we leave the conversation box up if anybody wants to drop questions in there, or if anybody wants to virtually put their hand up now to ask a question, we can unmute your microphone from here. Just from Mike Fox there, a question, any chance you could email on the slides he had up tonight? Absolutely, yeah, we can organise that with Noel, and hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for the feedback. Yes, Pat. I'll be getting around to the new circle of schools there in the first 2 weeks in January. So, yeah, we'll get around to everyone before the end of the school term and the end of the school year next year.
Peter.
Yeah, Gary.
I just seen a question there about more. Is there a link on more game-based stuff? Paul done a great thing on game-based stuff there. Remember was it July? Was it?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. We could send on that link as well for the more game-based stuff. Kind of on.
Yeah, 100%. We can talk about a resource for his presentation. So yeah, we can pass.
Yeah.
So by the looks of it, that could be potential. That could be that could be it for tonight. So again, thank you very much, Jonathan. Thank you for tuning in, and you can get in contact with us at any stage via phone or over email. Thank you.